For many years at our Messianic school in upstate New York, we've been teaching a course called The Life of the Messiah from a Messianic Jewish Perspective. Our other courses in that program are in a 5-year cycle, so you have to come for 5 summers to get everything we offer and get a certificate of completion. Because of its importance, every year we teach in 1 week the 25-hour version of The Life of the Messiah. One of the questions that comes up has been, what are my sources for the different teachings I do? How do we know what the Logos means? How do we know what this means or that means? So after 40 years of research and everything else, we put together a detailed study. It's a 4-volume set. This is just merely the first volume. And to get everything that we offer, this full set contains everything, which means that this will be very good for people who are in the teaching ministry, whether full-time or from a lay perspective. It's good for pastors and so on, and this becomes a very good resource book for them. And so this becomes valuable. Furthermore, within this 4 set books, we have the whole harmony of the Gospels in parallel columns. You don't need to have a separate harmony to get everything we offer. So this is a very valuable tool to get, for either to read through or even to use just merely a resource tool when needed for certain passages of Scripture. Now, for most believers, that is too much material, so we put out a shorter version. By shorter, it's an abridged version. By abridged, we do not mean that there's things about the life of Messiah in here that are not in here. What makes it a bridge is that we don't go into all of the rabbinic writings, the rabbinic sources, because what we have here is the first century Jewish context of which the life of the Messiah played out. And everything about the Gospels themselves that we find in here is also in here. So what this does not have is, it may be footnoted, but for the most part it doesn't have all of the rabbinic studies and resources which you may or may not want. So it's always good to start with this one, and so on. Furthermore, this one would not have the harmony, so we also have produced as a tool for the abridged version an Ariel's Harmony of the Gospels. If you buy this set, you don't need this because this is already in here. But if you buy the abridged version, this is a helpful tool to have, because as you go through it, you will see different columns and things of that nature: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And that's a very resourceful tool. Now, as I went through some very good Bible schools and also very good seminary, generally when they dealt with the historical backgrounds of the life of Messiah, they focused only on either the Greek backgrounds or the Roman backgrounds, which is valuable, especially for certain books like 1st and 2nd Corinthians, for example, or Colossians or Ephesians. But the life of the Messiah and the Gospels did not play out in the framework of a Greek-Roman culture, but a Jewish culture, and a very specific type of Jewish culture, that of 1st century Israel. So throughout all 4 Gospels, things are written the way they are written, things are said the way they are said, things happen the way they happen because of a specific element of 1st century Judaism. And in all of the commentaries I've read, only a couple of those commentaries dealt with the Jewish backgrounds, and these were written by Messianic Jews of the past. But they were not in most Life of Messiah books. And in the lectures that we had at the Bible College and Seminary, they were not inaccurate, but they were incomplete because of a lack of understanding of the Jewish frame of reference, and that's why these tools are so valuable. So, for example, John is usually identified as being the most Hellenized or Greek of the four Gospels. And for many years, even rabbinic writers who were commentary writers on the New Testament would say that he's falling back on Greek culture, Roman culture. But when the Dead Sea Scrolls were found, and the Dead Sea Scrolls contain biblical books, but also theological books of 1st century Judaism. And that concept of the memra, which is the Aramaic word for logos, which means word, is a very important concept there. So what they thought was a Gentile or Greek culture that they're writing about turned out to be a Jewish culture as well. And that's why these things are important. So whether you deal with the abridged version or the unabridged version, you'll get into the Jewish frame of reference. But again, the only difference is the sources, not what's in the gospel per se. And if you choose the abridged version, you'll get the same material. And if you still feel short-handed, then you can go from there to the unabridged version. And they're always available either way. So that's what makes these writings about the Gospels unique. Another example I might point out is that in rabbinic theology of first century Israel, there were actually two Torahs, or two laws. First is the written law, which is the law of Moses, which are the 613 commandments. God didn't give Moses just 10 commandments. He gave him 613 commandments in total. And these are the commandments found in Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. But when you move into the issues about the rules and regulations, then the rabbis in the time when they came back from Babylonian captivity up until into the first century began teaching that there was also an oral law. And the oral law was given to Moses, called oral because these are many laws and commandments that Moses did not write down. It was passed down by tradition from Moses to Joshua, Joshua to the judges of the book of Judges, judges to the prophets, and the prophets to the men of the great Sanhedrin, known as the Sophrim, or Sofer, meaning the school of the scribes. And they added hundreds, sometimes thousands of new laws. For example, to one commandment God gave to Moses, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy, they added about 1,500 new Sabbath rules and regulations. And that became equal with Scripture. So as the Messiah appears on the scene, Pharisaic Judaism consisted of both the written law and the oral law. The Messiah said he will keep the written law perfectly down to every yod and stroke or jot and tittle. But he's not going to affirm the keeping of the oral law. So you see phrases dealing with the written law, it is introduced by the phrase, "It is written." It is written. But in the Sermon on the Mount, in Matthew chapters 5 to 7, you'll find another phrase, "You have heard there was said, ... You have heard there was said, ... That's a quotation not of the written law, but the rabbinic interpretation of the written law by the oral law. And they expected the Messiah to be in submission to the written law, and Yeshua and Jesus was, but he refused to submit himself to the oral law. And that became the bone of contention between him and the Pharisees. You often hear people say the reason they rejected the Messiah is because he would not overthrow Rome. However, you won't find that reason in any of the four Gospels. The reason, like in the Sermon on the Mount, is his rejection of the authority of the oral law. And that's really the issue. And there are many such things like that. So again, things are written the way they're written, things are said the way they are said, things happen the way they happen because of a specific emphasis in the Jewish culture of that day. And that's either the abridged version or the unabridged version. You will learn what those things are bit by bit.